In this tutorial, we will implement hand tracking in Unity using Imagine WebAR HandTracker. This is useful for creating AR filters, such as hand effects, wearables, and gesture recognition. Let's start by creating a new project. Let's name this example HT Demo. Then click Create Project. Once your Unity project is created, let's import Imagine WebAR HandTracker. You can do this step using the Package Manager. And now, let's set up our AR scene. Go to Assets, Imagine WebAR, Create, HandTracker. Then we delete our main camera. Then go to Assets, Imagine WebAR, Create, AR Camera. Then we drag our AR camera in the Tracker Cam property of our hand tracker. And now, we're ready to create our hand objects. Go to Assets, Imagine WebAR, Create, Hand Object. First, let's create this simplest hand tracking example where the hands move in just the X and Y axes. So let's set the tracker mode to 2D. We also disable debug hands. Now let's add a 3D object. Go to Game Object, 3D Object, Sphere. Then bring the scale down to 0.2 in all axes. Then we drag it inside joint 0 of our hand object. Then lastly, we set the position to 0, 0, 0. Let's create a second hand object. Go to Assets, Imagine WebAR, Create, Hand Object. Now let's add particle effects for this hand. Go to Game Object, Effects, Particle System. Let's bring the scale down to 0.1 in all axes. Then set Simulation Space to World. Then we drag it inside joint 0 of our hand object. Then we set the position to 0, 0, 0. Before we forget, to render particles properly in AR, we go to our AR camera and set Video Plane Mode to Texture Pointer. Then set Video Plane Material to Video BG. Now, we're ready to build our project. Go to File, Build Settings. Then click Add Open Scenes. Select the WebGL platform, then click Switch Platform. Once Unity has finished loading, go to Player Settings, Resolution and Presentation. Then select HTracker. Also, optionally, go to Publishing Settings and set Compression Format to Disabled. Then click Build and Run. Once our project has finished building, a web browser will open. Click Allow Access. Then you should see our sphere and particle effects getting tracked in each of our hands. Now, let's create this example with virtual wearables. First, let's delete our two hand objects. Then go to Hand Tracker and set Tracker Mode to 3D. Then we create a new hand object. Go to Assets, Imagine WebAR, Create, Hand Object. Then in the 3D settings, enable Use Hand Mesh. Now let's import assets for our bracelet wearable. Then drag our bracelet model into our scene. Then we drag it further into joint 0 of our hand object. Then we scale it down appropriately to the size of our hand. Now let's import assets for our ring wearable. Then drag our ring model into our scene. Then we drag it further into joint 17 of our hand object. Then we set its position to 0, 0, 0. And its rotation to 90, 0, 0. Then we scale it down appropriately to the size of our hand. Then reposition further into the finger. We can then add more accessories by duplicating our ring and repeating the previous steps for other fingers. The last step is to make a hand mask. Go to our hand mesh and change its material to depth mask. Now, we're ready to build our project. Go to File, Build and Run. Once our project has finished building, click Allow Access. You should now see our ring and bracelet accessories anchored to our hand. Now let's try creating this animated example. We will learn how to trigger animation events based on the position of our fingers. First, let's delete our hand object. And then we create a new one. We go to the 3D settings and enable Use Gestures. Now we import our animated asset into our project. Then we drag it inside joint 0 of our hand object. Then we scale it down appropriately. In this case, our animation setup is fairly simple. We have two states, an open and a closed state. You can learn more about Unity animations in many other tutorials. In our case, we will transition between the two states using a bool parameter. We'll name this parameter middle closed to map it to our middle finger. We transition to our closed state when middle closed is true, and to our open state when middle closed is false. Then we go to our hand object, and under Gesture Events, we add a new event for on finger closed. We drag in our Animator object, and for the function, we choose Animator, set bool. Now we can test if the animation events are mapped properly. Click the play button. There will be very limited functionality in the Unity editor, but we can test a few things at least. Go to HandTracker, and under Editor Debug Mode, click Found beside your hand object. You can also use the keyboard to move your camera. Then we go to our hand object. Under Test Events, click Middle Close to toggle between open and close. Now that it's working, we can then duplicate our hand object. Let's name this hand object 1. Reposition it properly. Then change the hand index to 1. Now we're ready to build our project. Go to File, Build and Run. In this final example, we will learn how to detect hand gestures. Note that this feature is still experimental at this point. Let's start by deleting our hand objects and then creating a new one. Let's add a sphere just to be sure which hand is being detected. Scale this sphere down to 0.1 in all axes. Then parent it to our HandTracker's joint 0. Then let's create a UI text. Go to Game Object, UI, Text, Text Mesh Pro. Let's name this gesture text. We position this text at the center of our screen. Set font size to 72. Let's use a center align both horizontally and vertically. And we set wrapping to disabled. And finally, change the text to none. Now let's go to our hand object and enable use gestures. We click the plus button under Custom Gestures. Let's name this gesture Rock. Under On Detected, we drag in our gesture text. We choose Text Mesh Pro. Search for string text. Then we type in rock. Then we create a new gesture, and we call it paper. We turn on all the finger values and change the gesture text to paper when it's detected. And then, we create a third gesture, scissors. We turn on the appropriate finger values and change the gesture text to scissors when it's detected. Under On All Gestures Lost, we drag in our gesture text. We choose Text Mesh Pro. Search for string text. Then we type in none. We can test these events in the editor when we click play. Go to our HandTracker. Under Editor Debug Mode, click Found. Then we go to our hand object, then click on Detected for each of our custom gestures. Our gesture text should change appropriately. And finally, let's build and run our project. Note that custom gestures are still experimental and some gestures will be hard to detect. You can manually tweak the closeness thresholds for each finger to make your gestures easier to detect. Thank you for watching and we'll see you in the next tutorial.